Hi there, this is Solitude from Solitude Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is The Bedford Incident from 1965, starring Richard Widmark, Sidney Poitier, Martin Balsam, and Donald Sutherland. This film was suggested by a couple of subscribers, Stephen S. and Last Unctives, when I did my Sidney Poitier in memoriam video. They left comments talking about this film. This is just a DVD copy as far as I'm aware. There's not a Blu-ray. Well, hopefully there will be someday. I did notice this is a Columbia release, so hopefully if anybody's watching from Indicator, a Blu-ray of The Bedford Incident would be very welcome. So I want to thank those commenters for suggesting the film. So I picked it up, watched it, and I kind of had to do a video on it because it's rather fantastic. Sidney Poitier plays a journalist. Martin Balsam plays a doctor they're both dropped in onto the USS Bedford, and whose captain is Richard Widmark, and they're a NATO sub-hunter, basically, who keeps a track of Russian submarines to make sure they're not going places they shouldn't be going. So it's a kind of a routine mission they're on, but it takes on more serious ramifications when they come into contact with a Russian sub. So there's lots of wonderful little subplots going on. Like I say, you have Martin Balsam as the new ship doctor, even though Richard Widmark doesn't want him, and he has been out of service for a while. He's got failed marriages and failed practices, so he's back in the Navy, and Richard Widmark doesn't think that much of him. He's got kind of new ideas, and Richard Widmark is just pretty dismissive of him. There's a brief appearance by Donald Sutherland, a young Donald Sutherland, as somebody who helps in the medical centre, whose main job is analysing the waste food that's dumped by the Russian ships and vessels, to kind of give Richard Widmark an idea of how long it was since they passed in the same waters. You have Eric Portman, the good old Powell and Pressburger regular from the 40s and 50s. He plays an ex-German submarine officer who, as Richard Widmark says, sunk about 300 tons worth of American and British ships during World War II, but he's helping NATO, and he has this wonderful perspective of, you know, the submarine captain and what he's thinking and what strategy he's using. You know, there's wonderful moments later in the film where Richard Widmark tells Sidney Poitier that Eric Portman's character is not really on the surface, he's underneath in that submarine, thinking what their strategy is. You also have the young officer who's kind of trying to impress Richard Widmark, and Richard Widmark rides him pretty hard. He knows one day he might be a good officer, but not at the moment because he feels kind of entitled. And you've got Sidney Poitier is obviously he's fascinated by Richard Widmark, who, you know, this is after the Cuba Missile Crisis, and Richard Widmark's character made some comments as if he was more for force in that situation, and Poitier's character wants to kind of interview him and try and draw him out a bit, because he does seem to be an old school military mind rather than a kind of let's find peace. So you have all this going on. The film was based on a novel. It was directed by James B. Harris, who I actually thought made lots of films, but according to Letterboxd, they only directed 5, including a couple of James Woods, Cop, and Fast Walking. So he didn't actually make as many films as I thought he did. But this one is really tight, really claustrophobic. We don't see inside the Russian submarine, we just see the top of the submarine at times. It's all pretty much in the bridge, or in the rooms in the Bedford. But he makes the compositions interesting enough that even from different perspectives of the same bridge, the camera's doing interesting things, and the composition of the characters and their place in the frame is interesting enough so it never gets dull. Plus the story does kind of take off, and it's all lots of glances and looks. Now obviously, if this happened in reality, Poitier as a journalist would probably just be locked in his quarters and wouldn't be allowed on the bridge, but obviously for dramatic purposes, he's told by Widmark to get off the bridge, and he kind of sneaks back on and switches his tape recorder on. Whereas obviously in reality he would just be confined to his quarters for the whole incident. Shot in black and white. It really looks nice even on the DVD, but like I say, hopefully one day somebody will release a Blu-ray of it, because it's a really quite fantastic little film. It has... You can feel, because originally Widmark's orders, once they find the sub and they realise it's actually transgressing into non-international waters, he's originally told to wait, which obviously annoys Widmark, because he wants some action, and he has his crew kind of hyped up to get some action. At one point early on in the film, Poitier asks him about how nobody seems to want a transfer off his ship, even though they're kind of offered high paying jobs in industry. They'd rather be on Widmark's ship. And you kind of get the sense, well, it's because Widmark kind of promises them a bit of action, and he's desperate to engage with a Russian submarine, but originally he's told to kind of lay off. But of course he pushes the envelope of what he's allowed to do, and even Eric Portman at one point says, if I can be frank, Captain, I think you're frightening. And obviously it builds, you can feel the film very much like the ship ploughing through the waters of celluloid, and getting to the climax, which I'm not going to give away, but it is a wonderful climax. And when it comes, it's actually done in a really surprising way. You can kind of figure where it's going, but it's still done in a really surprising way, and using interesting filmmaking technique, which is used in the ends of some other films. But it's a really tight, well shot, brilliantly acted film. Originally, Martin Balsam is kind of there for a light bit of comedy, but even he has his kind of point that he's very much a character who kind of is very passive and submissive, but there's still a point where he faces up to Richard Widmark. Poitier is not actually in the film all the time. There are parts where he's off the bridge and we focus on the action on the bridge. But Poitier is fantastic because he's very kind of what's going on, and he's trying to draw Eric Portman and Richard Widmark's characters out a little bit, but even when the two of them are in the cat and mouse with the submarine, they're not giving that much away. So Poitier spends a lot of the film just kind of going, what the hell's going on? And Widmark is fantastic. He hadn't got into that kind of lazy American actor period where he kind of got into in the 70s when they were all in these disaster films and they were doing it sleepwalking. He's still got that cool, he's still got that swag. He even lets out one of those little psychopathic laughs that we all remember from Kiss of Death and Pick Up in South Street. So he's still got that glint in his eye, he's still engaged. He's still somebody you kind of root for just because of his charisma, but obviously he's slightly unhinged. But even then, there's a point where he realises he's gone too far, but by then it's possibly too late. Martin Balsam is dependable as ever, and Eric Portman is just wonderful as the German Commodore who used to blow up Allied ships, who's now on their side, but he can at least relate to the submarine captain and what the submarine crew is going on about. There's all these chasing and hunting analogies being thrown around, which is always makes for some good dialogue. It's just a great wee film. Again, one I wasn't familiar with until it was mentioned by a couple of commenters, which I appreciate, and keep those suggestions for films that I should check out coming. Like I say, top class Widmark and Poitier and Balsam and Portman, and Donald Sutherland, even though he's not much screen time, does that early goofy Donald Sutherland stuff that he tends to do before he was kind of a star. Nicely shot, nicely directed, and just a wonderful little film. So thanks very much for watching this random review of the Bedford incident from 1965. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen it before and what you thought of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell.